Welcome everyone to this virtual reunion session today. We are welcoming a number of entrepreneurial alumni to share their insight and experiences. Professor Bill Aulet will serve as our moderator. Bill is a graduate of the Sloan Fellows class of 1994, is a professor of the practice of technological innovation, entrepreneurship, and strategic management. He's also the managing director of the Martin Trust Center for MIT Entrepreneurship. We're delighted to have him here today. So Bill, please take it away.
Let's do this. Thank you very much, Patsy, and welcome everybody out there. Hopefully this will be a very fun exercise for you. Can everybody turn on their cameras? So we have 5 alumni here, 4 of who have already graduated, 1 who's on educational leave, who are going to talk about their entrepreneurship experience at MIT and since then. Actually before MIT, at MIT, and since then, and where entrepreneurship is going. And we would really love to get your questions, comments, and the like. We would love it if you could put them in the chat, but we just heard the chat has been disabled. So we're trying to figure a workaround here. Perrin's going to be working on some Python code while this thing's going on. That was a joke, Perrin. That was a joke, all right? But we would love to hear what you have to. The chat isn't disabled. Oh my goodness, is that true? So fire your comments away on the chat, please, because we want to have this as interactive as possible. I know it really sucks when you have like a panel and there are 5 people and it's single threaded. So we're going to keep this moving around and people are going to talk about their background, their observations. So first of all, we're going to start off with a personal background, where you came from, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up? What did you do? How did you end up at Sloan? So let's start with who is the elder statesman here? Daryl. Oh man, but you look much younger than however old you are. You look much younger than that.
Well, it's great to be here, and to all my classmates who are retiring, there's a lot left in the tank. I'm originally from Detroit. Probably the most motivating factor for me in entrepreneurship is being a competitive athlete. I played basketball at the University of Michigan, and everything is about, to me, competition, and that's been driving building 2 companies over the last 30 years and attacking problems. One very recently is affordable housing in urban inner city areas and communities of color. But it's great to be here, and a welcome to all the class of 1981, which most of the panelists weren't born then, but that's okay.
Greatest class ever at Sloan, wasn't it?
Yes,
Daryl?
it was the greatest class ever, the greatest generation ever.
And Daryl, do you just want to clarify that you're taking yourself out of the running for the Boston Celtics head coach?
No, I'm gonna put my hat in the ring. I think it'd be a great job. I think I could do both. Affordable housing and coach the Celtics. So I'm going to give it a shot.
All right. Well, next up in working our way backwards, going all the way from 1981 to 2011. Well, let's start with Julia, who, even though you look much younger than Rene, just for the record.
You're
on mute.
Sorry, I've got my whites. So it's great to be back. I can't believe we're the old people in the room now. We're young at heart. I'm Julia. I guess I started. I would say my path into entrepreneurship was because I sort of felt like a dilettante. I liked a little bit of everything and couldn't decide. So went to Stanford, and my first quarter decided I wanted to be an astrophysicist, and then got really scared that I was the dumbest person at Stanford. I got out of astrophysics and went into environmental engineering and the D School, which is all about design thinking and designing experiences. We were in Silicon Valley, so I started interning for every GSB business school student I could find. I did 7 internships, realized I really loved startups. So started 2 clean tech startups before I went back to Sloan to think about how to build a real company instead of just kind of feeling my way through the startup world.
We thought you came to MIT to meet the love of your life, Julia.
Oh, I had already met him.
Oh, Jesus. I thought this was a Sloan romance.
Oh, no, we went to, so my husband and I started a company together, and we also went to Sloan together, so.
That would be one Jeff Zero, who won the karaoke competition when we went to Silicon Valley. Did you see that, Rene, when he broke out and did the hip hop? It was unbelievable.
Thank you. He loves rapping for fun.
Now we'll go over to Rene Reinsberg from that celebrated class of 2011 as well.
What a year. Yeah. So many great entrepreneurs. Yeah, it's great to be here. So my journey in a nutshell, I grew up behind the Iron Curtain in East Germany. And when the wall came down, my parents, who were trained engineers, were taking over the family business. And it was a shoe store. And they had never operated a business, and they were new to capitalism. So it was a great learning experience in the 90s. Remember many nights sitting at the kitchen table, looking over my school textbooks with them, trying to learn together, making sense of supply and demand. And out of that kind of experience, now, I was helping in the store from a young age, but I ended up building some software for them to better run their store. It was kind of like a school project, but then it ended up turning into a company, never venture backed, profitable. And every now and then I got my smaller brother to help out. So very different from the businesses I've started since. But it was fun. And it kind of, instead of studying physics, set me off on a track to study business. And so I studied business in Germany. And then, I kind of I just saw, wow, there's this whole big world out there. So I went to McKinsey, went to Morgan Stanley, really liked Morgan Stanley, ended up going there after graduation, worked for a few years in finance, and then was kind of ready for a next adventure. So moved to Latin America, did a bunch of things there. Won't go into detail. Bill gave me like a sharp 2-minute warning here. And then I was like, okay, what's next? And so
you're way over time.
I know. And so then I came to MIT, and it was the goal of starting a company. And I'd heard that.
Stop. We're going to get into that next. We're going to get into that next. This is just the personal stuff. All right, Perrin.
Yes.
We've got someone from Detroit who wanted to be a professional basketball player. We've got someone from Silicon Valley who was a dilettante. We've got someone from behind the Iron Curtain. What can you bring to this that's interesting?
Sure. Well, I'm from the South. So that's saying a lot right there. But yeah, I'm Perrin Quarshie. So I am founder and CEO of RealBlocks. My background, I was actually an engineer out of Georgia Tech. Worked for 6 years in energy, finance, and engineering at a firm called NAC. And during that time, just on the side, I was always, playing around with the idea of how people could invest money better in things that were outside of the stock market. So I actually started off, with a platform to allow people to manage real estate remotely. Came to Sloan.
Wait, Perrin, we're going to get into what you did. Tell us who you are. We're going to get into like your entrepreneurship journey. Tell us who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so basically Sloan from 16, did a summer at Barclays. I run RealBlocks, which is a fund of funds platform for private equity here in Flatiron in New York. And we've, since that time grown up from basically just the idea of offering software to being a platform that truly, provides a mechanism for democratizing access to alternatives, specifically private equity, private credit.
All right, time out, Perrin. You're going into the next question here, and you're acting like an engineer. We wanted to know who you are.
Okay.
Tell us something interesting about you when you grew up.
Sure.
Daryl told us, he wanted to be a professional basketball player, and he disappointed all his friends by just not being that.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, let's see. I mean, I was the, it's funny. I mean, I was the kid who basically, was the most unathletic person you've ever met. And I mean, now I was competing in CrossFit for a while and had the highest snatch actually in New York for a while. So, I mean, that's kind of different because from somebody who was the most unathletic.
What a comeback.
That was quite a shift.
That's what we're talking about, Perrin. Now we know you, all right? The geek who came back and showed everybody else. We love it.
There we go.
All
Okay.
right. Beautiful. Shelley, representing all the entrepreneurs that are just graduated 1 year ago. Tell us about yourself, though, first.
Hi. Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, just graduated last year from SDM. Before that, I worked at Lyft for about 5 years. And I grew up in Toronto, and I was like convinced that I was going to be an aerospace engineer. So I started off like wedded to NASA. Then I went into management consulting. Then I went to a tech company, and now I'm in entrepreneurship. So I think I've just gone like narrower and narrower in terms of size of company. Yeah.
All right, still at the beginning of that journey. Well, Daryl, tell us, how did your entrepreneurship journey start and where are you now? I think you kind of talked about your company, but why are you an entrepreneur?
I'm an entrepreneur to solve problems that I see aren't getting solved. And one is in inner city of housing, there needs to be better quality, which is something we create. And then there needs to be more comprehensive solutions in terms of most of the places in our markets are food deserts. So we partner with Amazon to bring Amazon lockers. So it's a series of finding solutions to problems. And also we are investing where others aren't. And I've learned over the years in building 2 companies that if you invest and if you know the markets you're investing in and you invest smartly, you can generate very attractive investment returns by the fact that you don't have a lot of competition, which is the case in our business.
Beautiful. And Marianne Hodges, that's correct. That's why we have the best alumni. They might not have the best haircuts, but they have the biggest brains. They might not be the best dressed, although Perrin, we got to give you a pass here on that. But we're the most authentic. All right, Julia, now this is your chance. Tell them why you're an entrepreneur, which I think you could never not be. And then tell them about Lark too, because you didn't get to promote Lark, which is just an amazing journey.
Thanks. I don't know what I would be if I weren't being an entrepreneur. I love it. It's just a new challenge every day. So I started in clean tech, but really I had a chronic condition all my life. And when I came to Sloan, I sort of had a reemergence of my chronic condition. And I also had another problem with getting woken up really early by my husband, then boyfriend, Sloaney, Jeff. And so I combined the two, and we created Lark Health, which today is really focused on helping anyone struggling with a chronic condition or at high risk of a chronic condition or behavioral health issue with essentially an AI nurse, 24/7 text message-based counseling coach. And so we've helped about 2 million patients, and we've grown. I mean, it's taken a long time in healthcare, but we have grown to raise 100 million, and that's helped us really expand to treat several disease states in diabetes and hypertension and smoking issues, behavioral health issues, pre-diabetes, and it's been a wild ride.
Wild is to put it mildly. Lark was one of the first wearables. I remember her sitting in E51 and then in the lobby, like trying to get people. If I put this on you when you wore it when you sleep, what would you do? And then she goes out to the West Coast and she's like, hey, Bill, I just gave this presentation to Sequoia and there were some people in the room from a company called Fitbit. Do you know anything about this?
It was Jawbone.
Jawbone, that's it. I'm sorry, Jawbone. Yeah. And then one other time she like sends me this email, hey, I'm going to see Barack Obama. I'll send you a video. And if any of you want to see a funny video, watch her selling Lark to President Obama in the White House. And then another time, another great video is Jeff proposing to her on the stage at TechCrunch. It's just
Oh, wow. How about that?
video sensation here, as humble as they come, and a video sensation. And
Bill, I should hire you for my PR.
no, I'd blow it. Trust me, I'd blow it. All right, Rene. I think you kind of went into how you became an entrepreneur. So maybe you should. I think Celo is a really well. Tell them first about Loku and then Celo. I think that's a really interesting story, and how like you got things going at MIT with Startup Central. I think there's so much.
Yeah, and I think like maybe even to answer the question a little bit, there's kind of a common thread, which for me is really, I don't know, I get a lot of satisfaction out of helping the small guys, right? So I mean, and even being the small guy myself, right? That's I think going up against sort of kind of a big incumbent or changing the status quo, right? I think that's really something that that drives me and I think many other entrepreneurs. And so, yeah, I think the common thread, I think even from sort of that first startup out of high school, but then certainly with Loku, was to, in this case, in Loku's case, helping small businesses better compete with the Amazons, the Walmarts, by helping them sort of with one click get found online and sort of put their information on all the right places. And now with Celo, I think there's a much bigger shift happening with sort of these this blockchain technology and decentralized kind of infrastructure, and Celo is sort of in the mix there. And I think what stands out about Celo is that it's focused on mobile, which finally no other team has really spent much time on. But if you look at the world today, you have 6 billion smartphone subscribers, and they're all accessing the internet, they're accessing the economy really through a phone. And so if we have sort of this big promise here, we want to actually make something happen, it needs to be kind of through mobile. So that's been our focus. And one thing I told Bill, but he's too old to understand, this is not a company, this is really an open this is an open community, an open network. And so already today we have on the order of 1,000 companies, from tiny startups in a garage somewhere in Nairobi or Bogota, all the way to Deutsche Telekom, who just bought a stake in Celo and is running a validator on the network and so on. So there's room for everyone. It's permissionless, it's open. If you want to be part of this, you can. And that's the beauty. And so I look at a lot of the entrepreneurs building on Celo infrastructure now, and I see sort of a similar passion to change the status quo, right? Whether it's bringing better financial services to their community or building, an NFT marketplace so people can earn an income where otherwise there wouldn't be jobs. So it's really an enabler for things even beyond sort of my imagination, and that's been really fun. But Startup Central. I mean, look, I think there's the one thing that I will say, which is maybe just to me, what kind of MIT as an experience comes down to. In Germany, after college, when I was sort of running my first company through college, and I was making a little money, it was good. But ultimately, I joined Morgan Stanley because at the time in Germany, this is like early 2000s, the people that became entrepreneurs were the people who couldn't get a real job, right? To put it sort of in the the common, that was kind of the common understanding, right? And so many of my classmates who went on and started companies had to live with that stigma, and they all turned out obviously amazing and started great companies, had great journeys. But even though I came from this kind of, in a way, entrepreneurial family, I was like, well, maybe I should get a real job. Maybe I should go to Morgan Stanley. And I had a wonderful time there, and it was great. And I actually still in touch with my former coworkers, so I don't regret that at all. But I think the thing that really was MIT knocked my socks off was how much entrepreneurship was celebrated, and not just entrepreneurship, but also failures. Bill, you may not remember this. Maybe it's a thing you do every year, but I think, and Julia, you remember this too. The first talk during orientation was an entrepreneur. I forget his name now. And he was talking about how he had failed. And I was sitting there, I was like, okay, well, I'm sure he's gonna in a minute say okay, everything turned out great and now he's this big success, but it wasn't coming, it's just, this is a failure and here's what happened. And at the end, everybody was just standing and clapping. And that was a special moment, because I realized, wow, it's okay to fail, it's actually, there's learning in that. And there was just a completely different mindset, which, I think the more we can kind of help spread, I think now it's much more common knowledge, right? That's kind of the way to think. But back then, for me, that was kind of a big revelation.
That's a really good point. We try to do 2 points you make. I just want to emphasize, and then we're coming to you, Perrin. Is first of all, I put it in the chat. It's more fun to be a pirate than to join the Navy. Being an entrepreneur is not easier. It's not the well-worn path. And we talk a lot about, you can go take the superhighway. You can be the 284th person hired at Amazon, and they've got a well-defined job description, and they've got a salary structure. And each year you're going to get a 4% increase, or you might get a 20% increase, and you might get promoted to or you can go into the jungle or the dirt road and write your own job description and work with the people you want. And while that's much harder and scarier, it's a much more rewarding thing, and we believe you can have more impact on the world. And I think that's your point, Daryl. You figure out what you want to do. If you can go on the dirt road, you can cut your own roads. It's not for everybody, but I think if you've come to MIT, you're well above average. And I think the other thing is, even when you don't succeed, you do succeed. My first company didn't succeed at all. I mean, my wife used to say, I thought a job is like when money comes into the house. This job you have, money only goes out and nothing ever comes in. And yet that was a brilliant education. And we had 2 people, Zona Lee and Ryan from Octon, and they just spoke to our class 2 weeks ago in the last class of 15390. And on purpose, to your point, Rene, I brought them in to say, it doesn't always work out. And when it doesn't work out, it's actually not that bad, because the last question then, would you do it again? And both of them said, absolutely. It was the best education I ever got, and now here's what I'm doing, and it's better equipped me to get to the next level. So great points. All right, Perrin, tell us. I think I cut you off when you were talking about RealBlocks, but let's start. Why are you an entrepreneur? And tell us about RealBlocks.
Sure. I mean, so I'd say I'm an entrepreneur because I'm, an engineer. I mean, that was my background. So I'd say number one, I have that kind of mindset in terms of wanting to always solve problems when I see problems. 2, I'd say I'm naturally a very curious person, and wanting to sort of use information and new perspectives to issues that I see. And then 3, I'm stubborn, and I'm somebody who definitely won't take no for an answer. So those are the things that kind of led me to decide to, for right from Sloan, build, a technology platform to solve what I saw as being a huge issue in terms of the inclusion of people and their outcomes where investment products are concerned. So that's kind of how I ended up, and that was the thesis behind starting RealBlocks. In terms of what RealBlocks is, as I was mentioning earlier, today, believe it or not, even the very best private equity firms in the world still sell private credit, and venture funds using paper documents. This is expensive and time-consuming. It limits access to people, and it also doesn't allow for liquidity. So, being a curious person and with kind of my mindset, I thought that there's no reason why a software platform could not be built to solve these issues. And so that's what we've built with RealBlocks, which is the first really a fully integrated, full-scale platform that integrates front, middle, and back office functionality so that the world's private equity managers and alternative investment managers can now sell online. And as a result of being able to sell online, we've expanded the market size by about 4x. We've also provided international access, and we've allowed for smaller positions that are tradable. And we've gotten off to a great start. We started off with JLL as our first customer. They exceeded their KPI in the first quarter by about 5x for the entire year by using our technology. So now they're using it across their entire $70 billion private equity business. After that, we moved on to USAA, where they wanted to, for the first time, offer an institutional index fund in the retail market. And we were able to exceed their KPI by about 3x. And they're also expanding the use of our tech. And then most recently, Neuberger Berman is our largest client, who's using us to create what is called a 40 Act fund that for the first time is taking private equity funds to the retail market, and thereby giving the average sort of the little guy, the person like us, access to what was previously an institutional only product for endowments. So I'm kind of, we've got very excited about that. And the fact that we're at the end of the day, helping to level the playing field and to improve outcomes for people like you and us when it comes to our retirement income and our wealth creation and the way in which we can have the ability to secure our financial future.
Beautiful. And I think what you see from everyone, and we're going to come to you, Shelley, is next is every one of these things is not just solving a problem, it's mission driven, financial inclusion, housing for people who don't otherwise, MIT teaches us, to be mission driven. We always talk about it, the German phrase, raison d'etre, reason for existence, that why every entrepreneurship is an ethical activity at its core. It's not just about profiteering. It's not just about solving a problem. It's about putting a positive dent in the world. And so, Perrin, I understood that that's actually not German. That was one of my jokes. I know that it's French, right? So, thank you, by the way, Ryan and Ogo, for your comments out there. We're going to be getting to those. Please keep firing away in the chat. Any comments, questions you're going to have, because we're going to get to those. So Shelley, tell us about MomMe and why you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I'll start with talking about what MomMe is. We are working on helping the postpartum recovery experience, both physically and emotionally. What that means is our first product, we're trying to build a wearable to help the recovery time and pain during after you have childbirth and you have a perinatal tear. I guess why I'm an entrepreneur comes from I definitely didn't set out to be it. And when I came to MIT, that was not at all my game plan. Having been at Lyft for 5 years, all of my colleagues would peel off and start their own companies. And I actually thought it was a huge ego trip. And I was not at all that was not for me. And when I got to MIT, same with what I think Rene was saying, was just the energy of everybody at MIT having sort of entrepreneurs and failure being so elevated. I just started taking classes and had a lot of fun with it. And the second part is that the problems that I wanted to be solved weren't being solved. So the first, I don't know, Bill, if you remember, my project in my class with you was on women's fertility. And there being testing to sort of circumvent the high cost of egg freezing. And then now with MomMe, looking at how underinvested and undercared for the postpartum experiences. I just looked at all the other companies and I was well, they aren't doing it. So if they're not going to, somebody should. So I guess that's why I'm here today.
This is just a great example of leadership in today's entrepreneurship. There's this impression you have to be an alpha dog to be a great entrepreneur. And our research shows that that's quite the opposite. In fact, Shelley, I remember you sitting in the front row during that fertility thing, and you were kind of the glue holding it together. And ultimately, then you become the CEO. I think you were what? I don't want to be the CEO. And we see that this kind of a servant leadership is a more successful model in entrepreneurship. In Delta V, we have seen, and this isn't a perfect correlation, but our our teams are succeeding, if succeeding, which is the wrong way to think about this, but it is one metric, is they're in business 5 years later, they're at 75%. That's all the Delta V teams. They're still in business 5 years later, which is ridiculously high, probably too high. But when you look at it and you peel it back, the ones that have female CEOs, they're succeeding at a 90% rate. So they're still in business. So this kind of alpha doggish, I'm an entrepreneur, you watch Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg, it's not true when you look at the research. It's this servant leadership that Shelley was just exhibiting there, which she's going to be very mad at me for pointing it out because she doesn't want any attention brought to her. But that's one of the things I think we teach, you know, in addition to it's about the mission. It's not about me, it's about the mission. All right, so let's go through a lightning round here. What did MIT do well to teach you? And then we'll do the other thing. We don't call it bad. We say, what do you wish you had seen? So let's start with the positive. Daryl, what did MIT do well to teach you to be an entrepreneur?
Oh, taught about data and analytics. And, you know, one comment that a few people have made on this panel, they love startups. I hate starting up. I mean, think about when you first start playing golf, that sucked. And then you want to become a good golfer. And so the same thing with a startup. I mean, you want to get to break even, and getting to break even and getting to scaling a business is all about data analytics and understanding what your expenses are to do everything, what your cost structure is, and all these things. And that's the thing that probably, you know, our business is very data driven, and that is a direct result of my MIT education. And in many industries, I mean, we're in a low tech industry. I mean, I basically rent apartments. Okay. It's people, you know, great thing about renting apartments, you cannot disintermediate that business by doing it online because people have a place to live. But we brought technology, but more importantly, the data analytics of understanding, you know, turnover, understanding, you know, what amenities people like and things like that. So that's what really helped us and helped me in building two businesses, understanding data, break even, and all the other things. Because at the end of the day, the great thing about a startup and a new business is making it a very large business that has sustainability.
Remember, probably remember Howard Anderson used to say, there are 3 great days in a startup. The day you start, because you think anything's possible, and then it goes downhill. And then the next great day is when you get the cash flow positive. You're like, I control my own destiny. And then the last great day is when you sell the company. All right, Daryl, thank you. Data analytics. Julia, you can't choose data analytics now. Give us one thing that MIT taught you in your vast 1-year experience that has been very helpful.
I loved your energy, Bill. I no one's paying me to say this, except for Bill, but I never felt more supported than at MIT. I remember Bill came out on the first day and was just so excited and believed in all of us so much, and so much more than I believed in myself. And you know, I loved that energy that Rene talked about, and the support network with the Entrepreneurship Center, and we'd all go hang out there. You know, the new ventures class that, you know, we did our business plan in, and I used my Lark business plan to then go to the pricing class and do pricing for Lark, and that was so fun. And I even, you know, in my reflection of learning through failure, I remember I was always kind of a overachieving Asian straight A student, and I got my first non-A, and it was actually a C. I got my first C in Matt Marks's entrepreneurship class. And I just remember being so stressed about it because I had to do a VC pitch on the day that I had to be in class. Otherwise, I would get a go from a B to a C because it was attendance related. And Matt was like, nope. But I just, I learned so much in that class that I finally realized, like, it's just about what you learn in the class. It's not really about the score. And it was a moment of pride a couple years later when Matt came back and said, hey, do you want to be one of the case studies in the class? And that was a lovely a lovely kind of finale to my traumatic grade. But I love the time at Sloan, and I can't believe it's been 10 years.
Yes, the supportive community, and that allowed you to kind of grow and not worry about some unnecessary things. Well, next time, invite us when you go to see Barack Obama, right?
Right.
All right, Rene, you've got data analytics, that's off the table. The card of like emotional support's off the table. What do you got?
Man, I was going to say community too, because really, I mean, all the stuff you learn in the classes, I mean, you can, nowadays you can watch a YouTube video or like, look at a recorded talk somewhere and, read a book or whatever. But I think really like being on campus, being surrounded by entrepreneurs that were equally clueless. And then, just having like people come through, right? People that could actually teach you a thing or two from, sort of what they had done or just also, again, tell you that, look, they also haven't figured it all out. I think that was really valuable. But if I can't pick that, see, I'm gonna get a little extra time here. No, I think the one thing that I think maybe it's underappreciated is sort of the chaos at MIT, which actually is I would call that like, positive chaos, right? I mean, the fact that we could like hack together linked data ventures in a couple months and put it on the course syllabus and create a way for, basically, people to come together around a new technology, ultimately create some ventures out of that class. I don't think that would have happened anywhere else, not even Stanford. I mean, I don't know. Stanford is great now that I'm out on the West Coast. I spent some time on the campus, beautiful trees, the weather is nicer.
Let's be honest, it's the premier junior college in the world.
But it, the sort of the grittiness and sort of, that kind of like, I mean, the messiness and the chaos of MIT is something really beautiful. And I hope it never goes away. And I think it's something that's, I look back and I'm, I'm probably, that kind of, has the highest sort of sentimental value too, because I do miss that. I do miss that.
I think that's a really good point. Like you have to have a threshold for chaos and still be operational. You have to like have a mission, deal with and achieve that mission, yet all this chaos is happening around you. That's a really good point. All right, Perrin, it's getting harder. The bar's going up. They're picking off the easy stuff here. What do you got?
Sure. I mean, well,
Shelley's last.
Well, I'd say that, I most appreciated the fact that the culture at MIT was unique in the way it emphasized innovation, collaboration, and humility. And I'd say that collaboration, by definition, is probably the most important thing that I've seen and noticed, in terms of factors that contribute to success. Because nobody who's an entrepreneur will tell you that it's a one-person activity. You are collaborating with your team, your investors, your customers, the government sometimes, always needing to collaborate. And so I really feel like the courses at MIT and the culture and just the overall ethos of the place really emphasized that in a way that brought out a sense of humility in people. And I've appreciated that the most. And, when I was there, I remember Raphael Reif saying, you will forget what you've learned, you will forget what you've seen, but in terms of, the experience and how it changed you, that humility aspect that I think characterizes MIT, I've never forgotten, and I use every day.
That's great. We talk about the 3 H's, that you got to be hungry, you got to be humble, and you got to be hardworking. That kind of assumes you're intelligent, but I guess if you get into MIT, you're intelligent. Those 3 H's. Well, that's excellent. Shelley, you've got the last word on this. Fill in the puzzle.
I want to cheat and double down on Julia's. Like the fact that the first class that I took with you, you made us watch like some of the Delta V videos, and I was like, that's ridiculous. I'm never doing that. Like over my dead body. And you were like, we will get you there one day. And literally less than a year later, I did my version. So I'd say that was definitely a large part, was like your sort of energy and belief in us.
I don't think it's individual. I think it's a system. It's building confidence in people by giving them that safe space.
Yeah. And then the other part is like the insane caliber of people that you can like run into.
Yeah.
My literal like found my co-founder's story was I ran into somebody in the hall, ended up chatting to them for like 3 hours, and then we thought we could work together. But that is very, I think, uniquely MIT.
I love the story I tell. The current governor of Massachusetts is someone I played basketball with in college, Charlie Baker. And there was this international contingent. They wanted to hear about, Massachusetts and entrepreneurship. So we were there together, and they asked the question. They said, how do you create such a great entrepreneurial ecosystem? So I start to stand up, and Charlie Baker grabs my arm. It's like, I'll handle this, Bill. I'm like, Charlie, you don't know anything about entrepreneurship. He goes, I'll take this one. Let me watch. I'm like, okay, go ahead. I'll clean up. And he gets up and he goes, it's easy. I'm like, here we go. He goes, it's easy. All you need to do is you get MIT and Harvard to set up in your state, and you wait 150 years and you'll have an awesome entrepreneurial ecosystem. I was like, son of a bitch. That guy, he just nailed it. So much of this comes down to talent. You can have the culture, you can have the teaching, but you got to have, it's like in basketball, Daryl, they say, you can have the X's and O's, but you need the Mo's and the Joes to win.
Now, did the governor have game?
He said a good pick, shall we say? He said a good pick.
Oh, that's bad. That's only from a shooter who appreciates a good pick.
I never saw a shot I didn't like, Daryl. And when in doubt, shoot. But I think your point, Shelley, is, look, Sloan is a fabulous place. But anyone who doesn't realize that right across the campus, a walking distance, is the greatest engineering school in the galaxy is crazy. They're not taking strategic management. And I think all of you took advantage of that. Rene setting up your class with Link Data Ventures with Sir Tim Berners-Lee, and Shelley, you finding it, and Perrin. It's just something you think about. All right, so now let's go to the flip side. What do you wish? Give us some feedback. What do you wish MIT had done better to prepare you for your entrepreneurial venture here? So we all had the pom-poms on, and we've all inhaled deeply, and this has been fun. But what can we do better? Critical feedback. Because feedback is the breakfast of champions. You do know that, Daryl.
Well, the thing that, and I'm not going to blame MIT, I'm going to blame me. Because of course, when we're at MIT, there is a great range of offerings in organizational and HR, but normally we don't take it because we're all alpha people. We want the finance, we want the entrepreneurship, we want the technology. But when I go to CEO forums, we spend all time talking about managing people. And you look at my company, I have 4 employees, 250 of them are on-site people, including porters that clean up and maintenance techs and people like that. And even a company like Amazon, most of their employees are they're warehouse workers. So I think that a greater emphasis on HR and managing people, because that's the thing, if you're scaling a business, that is the most important thing, or people, and getting it right there. And again, I don't blame Sloan. I just think the culture is that we're all the alpha dogs that want the high level finance classes with Professor Merton. That's just the nature of it. So
interesting. No, yeah, I think anyone who is not an entrepreneur out there, and Shelley, you'll find this out. The easy part is the technology. The easy part is actually, it's not easy. It's easy. Product market fit isn't that hard. The hard part is the people. And see, Julia, if you only hadn't gotten a C in that HR class with Matt Marks, think of, you would be Joe Biden right now. All right, what do you wish we had done, Julia?
You know, I'm going to turn it also on to myself. I was actually, you know, so focused on making sort of the idea for my next company, and I also, I felt a little bit, I think I've just always had imposter syndrome a bit.
Yeah.
And I saw so many amazing people. Like I love being around incredibly amazing people. But I think at the time I was really shy, and I felt like they were too cool for me a little bit. So I, you know, if I would go back to my younger self, I would, you know, get more comfortable quickly with myself. And, you know, maybe this is also, you know, kind of a potential idea. I later did this really amazing CEO forum kind of called T Group, where so Stanford GSB, not that we need to follow everything that Stanford does, but they have this, I think it's called Soft and Fuzzy, or it's essentially a T Group class that really delves deeply into how you come across to the world and what your strengths are, and what your kind of biases are. And I felt like that got me, you know, more comfortable, and with age and experience, just being out there, getting rejected all the time from VCs and other things. I feel like I got a little bit more comfortable in my skin. So there you have it. Feedback from myself, and maybe some.
I think this is a really good point. I mean, we're seeing that, like, you can teach people the mechanics, and we saw this in Delta V. And Shelly, you saw the program ECC. That was what this was all about. We were getting people to build companies, and they had the imposter syndrome, and they were like, they were doing a great job, but they couldn't believe that they were doing a great job, and they thought there was someone out there better. And we were like, no, you know. And they just, you know, despite giving me confidence to get it started, they didn't have the confidence to scale it and believe that they were really there. And that's a really important part. And that goes to the mental health aspect of it as well, Julia, which is, we're really, you know, and Shelly could talk about this, we're really focused on that now. We're investing a lot more money and time to not just the mechanics of how you do a startup, but to give that person a strong mental game so that they can deal with that and not end up with the imposter syndrome. But that is such a big problem. And everybody likes to talk about, you know, what's your cost of customer acquisition? What's your total addressable market? Yet again, going back to Daryl's part, the hard part is the people. I mean, it's ironic they call it the soft and fuzzy stuff, because it's the hardest stuff, right?
Yeah.
Rene, what do you wish there had been more? By the way, we love the questions coming in. This is really good. We're going to get to those shortly.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think generally, like, it's what you put in, that's what you get out, right? So I think it's hard to kind of ask MIT for more. I will say that before applying, and, you know, especially for folks who are not in the US and don't have maybe the same context, it's not clear that, you know, how good the entrepreneurial program is, right? I mean, like, you definitely, I mean, and I know many entrepreneurs from like many other schools, and I think MIT is such a special place, and the entrepreneurial program is so strong that if that was more obvious, I think more of the greatest entrepreneurs or people that have those aspirations would probably end up at MIT. And so, I mean, if I had one wish, probably it'd be for MIT and MIT Sloan to be a bit more aggressive on the marketing and just say, hey, look, we're, you know, I know it's like a little bit, maybe, you know, not sort of in the DNA to kind of go out there and boast, but shit, this place is special. And like, you know, if it comes down to kind of recruiting, you know, another great entrepreneur to the campus versus them going somewhere else, I think it's worth it.
Great point. again, goes back to the talent question, right, Rene? Even if we are the best, if we're not perceived as the best, other things. But I will tell you, we have just won the best lifetime entrepreneurship awards, like our 6th one, I think, will be coming up here in the next month. And it's being recognized by the colleagues out there. And I just talked to someone this morning who turned down a business school that might rhyme with HBS at an arts and crafts school to come to Sloan because specifically entrepreneurship.
That's awesome.
He said, I want to start a company. I don't want to, I don't want to be a consultant. I don't want to be an investment banker. I don't want to be an investor. I want to start a company. So,
look, I mean, I had this is just a side story. I had a good friend who did HBS around the same time that I did Sloan. And, he was working on some projects, so he didn't show up for like some classes. he was called into the dean's office and he was almost expelled from the school, right? And now he's obviously, 10 years later, he's been very successful. And it's just like, I think that's kind of going back to the chaos, right? I mean, like the entrepreneurial DNA, like, I mean, sure, you can print like glossy brochures, but that's never going to kind of achieve that. And so if there are ways to communicate kind of this specialness, then I think that's worth thinking about.
Point very well taken. Perrin, what do you wish you had seen more of?
Sure. So, I want to kind of touch on, what Rene mentioned and Julia also, but specifically me coming from a technical background, as many people who are at MIT, who end up at Sloan, for example, do come from, I didn't grow up and didn't have much experience and much sort of fluidity with public speaking before. And so that is something that I think is very important because, as an entrepreneur, there is not a day when you're not needing to convince somebody of something, be it yourself, a new team member, an existing team member, a customer, an investor. You're always needing to speak persuasively and to be able to, influence people. So I know that, a lot of the MIT's DNA is not necessarily being that type A person or that person with that bravado necessarily, and being more thoughtful and data driven. But I, obviously have done a lot of work on public speaking on my own, and everybody has to make that choice. But I would have appreciated being able to do a little bit more of that in the context of the academic work that I did, especially when it comes to entrepreneurship, because I think that skill has been very, very helpful, and it's very sought after and valuable, and may not be emphasized enough.
Amen. Great point. I mean, when I was at IBM, we studied how people got promoted, and their presentation skills was one of the top things that they got promoted by. It didn't have to do with the numbers. It had to do with how well they presented. And you know what? That's how you raise money, and that's how you get partners, and that's how you. So, I agree with you. We say a good business plan on your desk isn't a good business plan unless you can communicate it. Because you mentioned this before, collaboration. Entrepreneurship at the end of the day is the pursuit of opportunities with resources beyond your control. Right. And you're not going to get resources beyond your control. All of you had to start companies with much more, with only limited resources, and then you had to kind of hustle to get other people to give you those. Right. So really, really important. Thank you. Shelly, what do you wish you had seen more of?
Yeah, I guess as like one of the few non-MBA like full Sloan folks, I actually personally found that I really benefited from getting to like straddle the engineering and Sloan worlds. And I got super lucky like running into my co-founders who are like engineers and researchers in the hallways of Sloan. But I think as a whole, Sloan could probably do like a better job bridging that gap and like sort of forcing that like matchmaking between the MBA entrepreneurs who know that they want to be them and like the people who are working on some pretty hard problems out in the rest of MIT, and making sure that there's the opportunity for that matchup.
Yeah. Number one question we get from MBAs, can you help me find a technical founder? Number one question we get from the engineers is, can you help me find a business co-founder? It's
just
kind of like it's kind of like you're back in high school and the dance is there and the girls on one side and the boys on the other, and they came to meet each other, but they can't get out on the dance floor, right?
That's right.
So these are very dated analogies, I understand, but Daryl and I understand them. All right, we're going to go to the questions in a second, but where do you see entrepreneurship going? We are at another huge, I think, acceleration point for entrepreneurship with COVID, with everything that's going on. Where do you see quickly, entrepreneurship going? I know it's a big question, but Daryl, you want to go first?
Well, I see that, we've had, certainly this past year has been challenging, but, a lot of new innovations have evolved. And I do think that, the combination of some of the challenges that we've had in, communities of color, for instance, that, there are a lot of people working on solutions, particularly in the healthcare area and the like. And so, I think that what I see, at least in our world, that there are more people thinking about things that address problems that exist that have probably a good financial outcome. But I do think, and part of that is the flow, and we've talked very little about the flow of capital, but in our world, the flow of ESG into the capital world is humongous. And I think that will drive a lot of innovations because capital is seeking better environmental and social outcomes. So that's what I see, that we're just even on the tip of it. It's happening in a bigger way in Europe and Asia, which is about where half of our investors, come from. But I see that there will be a tsunami of capital that flows in the ESG space.
Real interesting, Daryl, to your point is, I don't know if you've seen the study that Scott Stern was involved with from the NBER. The stimulus package has driven up rates of Black entrepreneurship. I don't know if you've seen this. And that's directly, well, it's hard because there's always confounding effects, but you see Black entrepreneurship going up. Really, really interesting. And, and we talk about social justice, and we talk a lot about this. We talk at the trust, we talk generally about social justice, but as Andrew Young said, there can be no social justice without economic justice. If the average median income of a Black family in Boston is $8, which it was, and the median net income of a Caucasian family is $247,000, we can put in all the rules we want. It's really hard to get, social justice when you have such radical economic injustice. So that is a big, big issue, and one that we did some work this year, and it's called Kinetic, and we can talk more about that. But we could go down any of these. But Julia, where do you see the future from what you're seeing? Where's the future of? I know you don't have a perfect crystal ball, but what do you see the future of entrepreneurship being?
I loved Daryl's answer, but maybe taking another vector. We've had to onboard around 140 or so new teammates without ever having met them this past year in COVID, and all over the country. And I think that the leaders of startups in the coming years will really have to be adaptive to this new normal of a very globally dispersed workforce that's virtual, and how do you create that energy of a startup, while competing against all of the Googles and Facebooks throwing money at your competitors. I mean, sorry, not your at your the same pool of talent, right? And how do you create that mission-driven culture that pulls people to startups? I think it's a really interesting challenge, and my I guess to me, like the key tenet here is that the only constant that we have is change. And so just be adaptable to this chaos that's going to come. It's just a very big unknown.
Yeah, that's two really good points. And like, we talk about how the world will never get slower than it is today. It will only get faster. And every year it gets faster and faster. And the people who are going to survive are the people who can adapt to change and not just survive it, but thrive in it. And that's what we call anti-fragility. And so that's what entrepreneurship is about. The other thing that you said is very tactical, and we're really thinking a lot about this now. And I just talked to someone the other day. I'm a data scientist in Indianapolis. I'm working for a company. That Indianapolis company feels like they have an advantage because they're in Indianapolis and they got this data scientist. But in this new world, that data scientist can work for a startup for you in Silicon Valley. They can work for Google, right? They can work in their home and they can get paid, as well as someone in Silicon Valley and have the quality of life and the cost of life of Indianapolis. So this war for talent is going to get pretty, if you don't have this kind of culture that keeps them there for more than the money, it's going to be very difficult. And the question that every new employee asks, how many days do you expect me to come to work, right? It's really interesting change we're going through. Rene, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I'll kind of riff on this, take it a bit further. And these are things that we're already seeing in the crypto space, but I think they'll go even more mainstream in the coming years. The first one is around this concept of decentralized autonomous organization, DAOs. So this concept that you can basically have a few people come together and start a project. And in the traditional world where you sit around a table and discuss the equity split and call your lawyer and set up a cap table and all that stuff. This is taking this to the next level by basically saying here's a project that's governed by a token, a digital asset, and that digital asset is given out to people that are contributing value to this project, and both some of the initial contracts govern how those tokens are allocated, but then also how decisions are made and how additional tokens get distributed. And this creates kind of some really new forms of collaboration. And some of the smartest, for example, engineers in crypto are kind of DAO holders and contribute to a bunch of different projects. And so imagine this 9-to-5 model is definitely going away, right? It's basically, you look at your time and you say, okay, I want to be involved in these 4 or 5 projects and I have a certain allocation of the governance token. I can participate deciding where these projects are going, but I also get rewarded for the work that I contribute. And given that all of this is in the digital realm, it's much easier to measure and allocate than it would be sort of in traditional industries. So that's already happening, right? Some of the biggest projects in crypto are effectively run as DAOs today, with sort of various forms of decentralization. The other kind of aspect, and that's tied to that, is the fact that the early users of a product also are able to be owners of, or participants in a way in these projects. And so imagine the first 100 Lark users actually having Lark equity. I mean, that would be phenomenal, right? I mean, what a great way to kind of reward your early users and have them become true ambassadors for the product and the company. And, we try to do this in traditional startups by giving out advisor shares and coming up with all kinds of fancy structures, but it doesn't really work, on a big scale. And so if you think about some of the the next generation of social networks that are getting started today, just yesterday there was an announcement for, or maybe this morning, kind of a medium built on crypto rails called Mirror, where all the early contributors hold Mirror token and are effectively both power users, but owners of the project, right? And that's really powerful. And people talk a lot about Clubhouse, where in a bit of a sad kind of turn of events, I would say, right? Like the people that helped make Clubhouse big didn't really get a piece of that upside. And maybe there's retroactively now a way to kind of reward them and give them some equity. But I think we're seeing this, right, especially in social media, sort of kind of these kind of fast growing companies where the alignment is kind of off, right? And the business models of Web 2, like Twitter monetizing through ads, like people start questioning those models. And I think we're seeing new models emerge. So I think it's never been a more exciting time to be an entrepreneur. I mean, there's so much white space, right? I think the last big shift was maybe, the smartphone, the iPhone, right? And this is way bigger. I mean, this is a complete shift in economics and the way companies operate. There's something there for everyone, right? I mean, whatever you're interested in, you can't sort of ignore it.
Very interesting. Yeah, cryptocurrency kind of mindset applied to distributed. I'm getting messages here. We have to keep things moving because people are starting to leave. But Perrin, can you give me a quick rocket pitch on where you see it going, entrepreneurship?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so, I would say that just with COVID and the post-COVID world, I think the big impact, as most of us can probably surmise, is being more virtual. So we just closed our Series A led by Crosslink Capital, entirely virtually. And that was one of the first virtual deals that they did. So that's a good thing. That means that the world is becoming flatter. But I would say that entrepreneurs are going to probably have to be more mindful of the fact that creating culture in a distributed world is going to be much more complex. So I actually found that this hybrid model of hiring people was attractive to people, but the numbers were actually better when we had in-person meetings. So my team members who were virtual asked to come back to the office and start having meetings when I thought it would have to come from top down. So I think it's just going to be interesting for entrepreneurs just to be mindful of the opportunity, but the unique challenges that the virtual world will create, and continue to use data to make sure that they're still getting the right outputs.
Yeah, absolutely. This hybrid model, there's so much to be learned from it. There are benefits, but it takes away everything so intentional, and we miss those serendipitous collisions. So there's something there, and nobody knows what it is yet. I can assure you of that. Shelly, what do you see the future as?
I am new enough that I don't know that I have the best crystal ball. But
You are the future. The future is you.
I doubled down on Daryl's answer on entrepreneurship giving people voices that have habitually been underrepresented or historically been underrepresented, and solving those problems for those people. I think there's a pretty big shift in the current consumer culture that shows that they care, that the companies that they're spending money on are mission driven, care about the world, care about people, care about equity. And that is pretty uplifting if true.
You can see it at the bigger numbers. ESG, Exxon getting 2 members of their board, Shell having the students have reflected this actually for a while, but now you're starting to see the top down work as well. And as when Daryl said, the capital starts forcing you to do that, stuff happens. All right, I think this is a bit of a setup for you, Rene. Can you give us a rocket answer here? Is Ryan Thurston a classmate of yours? How did Professor Stuart Maddox Web 3.0 cast at Sloan prepare you for your entrepreneurial journey?
I mean, that name, Ryan, that rings a bell. I think he was a TA for that class. Maybe was I the co-TA? I mean, I would say phenomenal. I mean, was a name like that, for a class, you can't go wrong. So
Ryan Thurston the third.
Yeah.
Was he on Gilligan's Island too?
Ryan is amazing. Ryan, where are you now? Come hop on stage.
I don't think we can do that. Ryan, thank you. The answer is legendary. It was legendary. All right, this one's for you, Daryl. What is the biggest pivot you had to make in your business the past year during the pandemic?
Oh my God. The biggest is not, we are in 13 states and having to execute things by people not being able to physically travel there, which we got a lot of virtual inspections and things like that, and and support for our on-site people. But there's a normal cadence in our business where our leadership, which is based primarily in Irvine, California, and Washington, D.C., travels to all of our 85 communities, where when we stopped that, we had to start doing a bunch of other things. And again, Zoom can only show you so much. And we're used to walking around and seeing things, so that's been the biggest thing. And now that we've started to get back into travel, it's certainly helped our business. But I would say not being able to travel when you're a physical brick and mortar business where you have to be at the brick and mortar was very challenging.
Well, how about you, Julie? You're not brick and mortar. What was the biggest pivot you had to make, in this? And did it work? Sounds like it worked, because you raised 70 million during the pandemic, right?
Yeah, we were pretty lucky because we were doing virtual AI scalable healthcare and then the pandemic came, and so we basically just doubled down on the business side. On the company side, I would say that was the biggest pivot. We had a very strong Silicon Valley culture that, just very like soccer clubs and running clubs and blah, blah, blah. And how do you create that? So we ended up hiring in close to 35 states over the past year without having met folks, and basically just like recreated culture we have a Larker of the day where every day someone talks about themselves, and then they just keep on one-upping each other with like PowerPoints and so just a bunch of those things. I think that was the biggest shift.
Interesting. Challenge that everyone's had. I hear about Zoom roulette or something like this. All right, so Perrin, there's a question here. What's the best piece of advice you'd offer to a current Sloan student? You're 5 years out. What's the best advice you would give someone who's a current Sloan student?
Sure. Yeah, I would say to follow your intuition. So that's a Steve Jobs quote of, life's too short to be living someone else's life. Have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you want to become. So I think that that's a big one, and that's important because when I was at Sloan, there's so many different winds and forces, and so much is coming at you in terms of all of these other opportunities in various industries. Tech, finance, consulting, other different types of entrepreneurship. I would say that just try not to allow your own interests and your own voice to be drowned out by all of the noise, and just try and stay close to what your interests were, and think about yourself before school, during, and what you want your life to look like afterwards, and try and make the very best decision for yourself. I think that's the biggest factor, and that's the biggest thing that has changed for me.
Yeah, great advice. I hear people say that, everybody was going to consulting, so I decided I had to do it. The FOMO, like, don't let the FOMO.
Yeah.
Shelly, this is for you. I don't know who it's from, but the question is, I would love to hear a quick story about how you've used the Sloan network with a successful outcome.
I don't know what a successful outcome is in this.
You're so humble.
I will say that the Delta V board member network was phenomenal. The fact that we got that caliber of advice was incredible, and I don't think we would have kept on.
Can you be more specific? Like name one and why it worked that way?
I can't name one because I think it's sort of like the fact that they all had such different points of view, and they really pushed us the entire way throughout the summer. I don't think that we would have. Yeah, I don't think we would have kept doing our thing after.
Can you pick one? I know we love all our children equally, and they're all special little snowflakes, and they all get participation. But
I'll give Jay Fisk a shout out. I think he always asked really good questions. And
who was that?
Jay Fisk?
Oh, Jay Fisk. Yeah, yeah. And it was the advice that you got, right?
Yeah.
And then was Marjorie Brevard on your board?
She wasn't, but you connected us to her. We did.
Yeah.
Yeah, we spoke.
So ironically, Elliot Cohen's wife went to MIT and she's a doctor. And so that turned out to be a really good connection. Here's a question. I'll throw it out. Daryl, have you had a question? Actually, Rene didn't have a serious question. He had the one from Ryan Thurston. We all have volunteers or unpaid work as part of our professional experiences. Which unpaid opportunities were actually useful to your career trajectory? I think that's a really good one for you, Rene.
Yeah, look, so before Sloan, I spent a year in Latin America and did a bunch of volunteer work down there. And I think one example, it wasn't technically kind of unpaid, but it was, let's call it volunteer work. I worked with an organization called TechnoServe. They pay a small stipend, which is, I think it counts as like unpaid. But the fun part of the bit was, of the gig was that it was basically working with local entrepreneurs in sort of a consultant capacity. And so I got to see a lot. I got to see and understand a lot of how entrepreneurs in a place like Guatemala were operating their business, what challenges they were facing. And that was a really great learning experience that I think, it's super helpful now where, in our community, people are starting companies all over the world. And, sometimes it's sort of, especially like, Germany and the US, where setting up a company is straightforward, right? There's a lot of stuff that we kind of take for granted. Which in many places is not at all easy or, should be taken for granted. And so I think just being able to develop that viewpoint, I think has definitely helped me and shaped kind of my thinking and what I work on.
Yeah. It's also very interesting. You did an internship at a VC, and I don't think they paid you, but I think it really helped you kind of understand the other side of the table. All right, I'm being told we have one more question for Daryl. And then we'll Daryl, the question is, how did you hire your first non-founder employee, in your startup? How did, looking back at that, how did you do that? Interesting question.
It is an interesting question.
And it says, what screening criteria did you apply? And I think what's implied is, what did you apply and what would you apply now in retro to that person? Because it's a really important hire, right?
Yeah, but like many hires, they're important, but they're not the end of the world if you make a mistake. So that's the one thing. But it's interesting. The first hire that I made in my first company, Capri Capital, started in 1991, and I hired this person in 1992, Ellen Guccione. Who had all these, who was kind of a COO in that first company. And that was, let's see if I'm getting my years right. So Ellen is now the chief administrative officer of my company. Now we've been together for 28 years.
Wow.
So, I've had the same administrative assistant for 23 years. So anyway, and through two companies, so that was my first hire. And one of the things about your early hires, some people are okay when you're a certain size, but when you scale up, maybe, it's a bad thing to say, but when we were at in this current company at $1 billion of assets under management, it was a different business than today. We're at $3 billion. We're 3 times the size, and some people scale up, some people can. And one of the things about hiring people is hiring people, in my opinion, that have great depth and breadth where they can do multiple things and they can scale up or down. And Ellen happened to be one of those people, and that's why we've been together for 28 years.
Right. Great advice. Great advice. And keeping some stability in the organization is really important. Well, I want to thank you all. It's so great to see you all again, even if it's virtual, and we hope to see you all in person in the not too distant future. You're always welcome to the Trust Center to have some free ramen noodles, oatmeal, coffee. I don't know if there are any other food groups for entrepreneurs, are there?
Beer.
Yeah, I mean, I hope you have these, you got to have some alcohol there. I mean,
Yeah.
Those social lubricators, the adult sodas. Look, thank you all. Your time is precious. That's the one thing we have, not just at work, but outside of it. Sloan was a formative part, and we really appreciate you, not just today, but all the other things you do to give back. And it's really very, very helpful. I think it's a very special community. And hopefully everyone who's out there, I think there's many of you are still out there. You've hung in there for 1 hour and 22 minutes. I hope you realize that while we have fun here and we joke around a bit, none of us take what we do as a joke. What we do is incredibly serious. We just don't take ourselves too seriously. We take our mission incredibly seriously. And that's the beauty of MIT. And I think you've heard today that MIT provides the space for all of us to become entrepreneurs and to become better and to pursue these things with confidence and skill. And so hopefully you all, when you become super successful, you'll be able to give back to MIT, because that's what we need. We don't need people who are transactional. We need true philanthropy to help us, because we're not in this to get a piece of people's fish. Rene and I have had this discussion many times. We're in it to teach people how to fish. And there are lots of accelerators out there and funds that'll fund you because they want a piece of your fish. But we're here to help people learn how to fish. And that's what society needs. And at a meta level, the society has more and more problems. And we need entrepreneurs, not just in startups, to adapt to this change and solve these problems. We need them in big companies. We need them in academic institutions. We need them in government, heaven forbid. We need them in nonprofits, and even in the financial sector, Perrin. But so please, I ask you, I wasn't asked to do this, please support MIT, and please support our mission to educate and create more wonderful people like this, because those are the people who are going to solve the world's problems. I hate to tell you, I don't believe it's going to be government. I don't believe it's going to be big corporations. I believe it's going to be entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So with that, Patsy, what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to turn off our videos now. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
So much, everyone.
Ton of fun.
Thank you.